Welcome to Dreaming in Color, a space for social change leaders of color to reflect on how their unique life experiences, personal and professional, have prepared them to lead and drive the impact we all seek. This season, we're traveling to the continent to highlight African leaders and the continent's role as a key driver of global innovation and leadership. This is Dreaming in Color, Africa. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Tijan Watt, a seasoned entrepreneur and investor with over 20 years of experience building and backing dynamic ventures across Africa and the US. Tijan, welcome to Dreaming in Color. Tijan.
So Darren.
Thanks for having us. It's wonderful to be here in Senegal.
Welcome to Senegal.
Thank you, thank you. As you know, we start with an invocation. So I pass the floor to you.
Okay.
How do you want to bring us in?
Yeah, so I think there's a word that kind of struck me as I was starting to come to Senegal, and they wanted me to be able to greet my grandmother. So that word, actually a phrase, is Jam Tan. Jam is J-A-M, Tan is T-A-N, and it means peace only. And so basically, in Africa, especially in Senegal, we don't just say hello and then goodbye. It's kind of like hello, and then how's your family, and then how's your health, and how's your tiredness is one of the phrases. And then the response is always
Jamtan.
yes. So let's give it a little go.
Okay.
The first is Nombada,
Jamtan.
Adeseli,
Jamtan.
No Galimawadi,
Jamtan.
Alhamdulillah.
Got it. And Jamtan means what?
And Jamton means peace only. And, in this day and age, you realize that it's not a guarantee. Even in Senegal, we had some pre-election disturbances, and then you realize why this phrase has lingered, and it comes from our ancestors because they understood the importance of peace. So that's a word, and my father really liked that word. He created a website called jamtan.com.
Oh, wow.
Which is talking about the Fulani culture in Senegal. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Jamtan it is, and thank you for grounding our conversation in peace as we start.
yes.
Right. So with that transition, I would love to start with your background, your growing up. So growing up, you grew up in an intersection of so many powerful Black identities. You have Senegalese roots from your father, Southern Black heritage from your mother, and a childhood in D.C. often called Chocolate City. What was it like to grow up in a home where such rich cultures and histories were present? And how did that shape your early understanding of what it meant to be Black in the world and navigate so many beautiful and functioning Black cultures and identities?
Amazing. I think the first thing is to acknowledge that you don't choose your parents. So you don't choose where you were born and where you grew up. And so I think it's important for people to kind of keep that in perspective. Obviously we do, but there are people that don't have those chances. I don't know, man. It's just been blessings. First of all, I actually had an interesting meetup with one of my cousins. So she is also amazing. She clerked on the Supreme Court, blah, blah, blah. And her mother is from Tuskegee, like my mother. And her father's from Jamaica.
Mm.
And she was like, oh, yeah, we all met up in Paris. So my father was doing a doctorate at Grenoble in France. My mother was from Morgan State University, a historically Black college, was doing a master's in French literature in France. And so there's this kind of like gathering of this Black elite who were fleeing something somewhere. In America, probably fleeing racism. In Africa, they're fleeing colonialism or going toward more opportunity. And so that's how they all came together, apparently. And apparently, someone had caught the right bus and there was some magic, and that's how
It's a serendipity.
And so I've always I've appreciated that my parents instilled an understanding of that in us, in me and my brother, and just in terms of how we define ourselves as Black people. We don't have to be like everybody, So I'll start on my mother's side. So Tuskegee, actually I even learned some things. There's something I learned recently. I'll take a tiny segue.
I love segues. Go for it.
Sorry, bro.
No, I love segues. Go.
So I just lost my uncle. So my mother's older brother, and her mother had passed away about 20 years ago. So I had to go back to Tuskegee for the ceremony. And it was actually great to see the cousins, the Gaylord family. And we went back to Tuskegee Institute, which is the university. Booker T. Washington had invited my maternal great-grandfather, or great-great-grandfather, to head up the agricultural department.
Oh,
These are highfalutin black folks.
Yeah. That's the fancy of the fancy.
Fancy, man. And there was an inauguration of like a plaque in honor of my namesake's mother. His name is Michael Gaylord, and his mother's Aunt Norma. I've known her as Aunt Norma, and they're doing plaques for Aunt Norma.
Oh, wow.
So what did Aunt Norma do? She was a researcher on the polio vaccine. And so and you talk about, I don't know if you know the story about Henrietta Lacks.
Yes.
And the HeLa cell line. So actually she had made a contribution to the research on polio vaccinations using these HeLa cells.
Wow.
As a Black woman. And they sent it to Tuskegee because they relied on the skills that they found only in that university. And so, we talk about hidden figures.
Yeah.
She's definitely a hidden figure. And that's just emblematic of the level of excellence that you find from that place. And that, it just kind of seeps in. Mm-hmm. You can't help but to seek excellence as a young man growing up in that kind of environment.
And I think it also speaks to the fact that, so for many of us, this idea of Black excellence was so normalized. It was our lives to the point that we don't even think about it as being something exceptional.
And
right?
So my grandfather, he went to Wharton in the 50s.
Yep.
Right. And my grandmother went to Columbia. So guess what?
Yeah.
I was going to grad school. It wasn't even an issue. The issue was how to get me to go to the HBCU.
Exactly.
In college. And so my mother's like, this is the first time I've seen that from my mother. Is like, oh yeah, you will be going to an HBCU.
Yeah.
I had never heard that side of her before.
We're going to talk about HBCUs a little bit later because they're really important, but I think there is something powerful about noting the legacy. And I think there's so many stories as someone who's fifth generation HBCU.
Right.
Right. Like these things have been happening for many generations, but we don't talk about them because those narratives aren't really talked about.
And what, by the way, they went up from Alabama to Wharton or to Columbia in the back of the train. So they were still treated in that way. Right.
So it was Wharton.
Right. On the way to Wharton.
Yeah.
And so that, pride in self was instilled from my grandparents all the way through to my mother, et cetera. Can I talk about my dad's side?
Well, I have a question about your dad.
Okay.
So you've written about your father, a Senegalese immigrant and entrepreneur, as someone who deeply influenced you. And I would love you to definitely talk about him, but share with us the values, principles he passed down to you that continue to guide you, your work and vision for the continent and for yourself as well.
Yeah, so just my dad, it's amazing. He's probably, I give him 82, but then he's like, I'm not 82, I'm 81. But, he actually lives in Washington, D.C. He's been there for longer than I've been alive, obviously. So he and my mother met. He was doing a PhD in Grenoble in water resources, which is in hydrodynamics, which is a kind of a mathematics. So you start to kind of be like squinting your eyes a little bit, like, how did this, Senegalese guy end up at essentially the MIT of France, which is in Grenoble, doing a very technical doctorate? And this is not, it's not rare in Africa. A lot of my generation, their parents were academics. But still, how did it happen? And I guess taking a step back, his father actually was in World War I. So he was conscripted by the French. He was born in 1892. My grandfather was born in 1892. The math is a little bit hard for me.
Math is math.
Math is math. So he went to World War II, conscripted by the French, and World War I and World War II. Had a German bullet in his chest and did not die because of, in Africa, we think it's because of the gree-gree that, the kind of,
the good juju.
Good juju, yeah.
Totally.
Fortunately for us, because otherwise we disappear like the future. But I think his exposure to the Western world said that, okay, he needed to send his children to the Western schools. My father went to the kind of elite high school in Saint Louis called the Lycée Fédère, which is where a lot of the kind of independence presidents in Africa and across the continent of Africa went to high school. And it's not actually a surprise, and this is a source of my own intellectual birthright, that my father would be able to do well in school because our side of the family have been historically religious scholars. And so my dad's cousins are all kind of imam of something. And, there's this idea that, we don't have much written language in Africa, but in fact, they were using Arabic characters to write in Pular language to each other. And my grandfather, when he returned to Senegal, he became somewhat of a political leader. And he represented this northern Senegal region to the newly forming independence government of Senegal. And he advocated for the nomination of Senghor, who was our first president in Senegal.
Wow.
On his deathbed, apparently, to Senegal. So, listen, I've been gifted on both sides.
Yeah.
Give a shout out to my nephew Zion. He's my brother's he's my brother's son, and he was like, oh, I think it was in 7th grade. He was like, I was kind of struggling in math, and I was like, no.
Pull it together. You
can't. Sorry, you just can't. So you have to, and that's a pressure, but it's also like, listen, this is who we are.
Yeah. I mean, in many ways, our ancestries, the folks that come before us, they're both a gift and a bit of a challenge, right? We have to step into it, but we can't forget that it's a very important gift.
Yeah. And so going back to my dad, he's a very dynamic guy. He teaches Tai Chi right now. He teaches also, what's that dance called? It's not salsa. Tango.
Your pops is better than you, actually.
So. He stays interested and active.
Got it.
Appreciate that.
Well, I want to jump back to you now. So after time in the U.S. and Nigeria, you made a choice to come back to Senegal and pour your energy into entrepreneurship and investing. What pulled you back? And what did you feel was missing from the conversation after building in Africa that you wanted to change?
Yeah, I mean, this is, so in high school, we knew about Senegal. We knew about our grandmother. Our grandmother was kind of like the emblem of Senegal for us. We called her Tano, which means grandmother in Pula. And we kind of knew about it, but we didn't know anything about Senegal in particular. So I think I had taken a trip when I was 13. It made a huge impression on me. Just the visual difference of Senegal, these baobab trees, and kind of the recognition of you as an African American, as African. They're like, oh yeah, you're a tout couleur. It's kind of you kind of feel it. I think every African American that comes to Africa for the first time, there's something like, wait a minute, the taxi man is black, the president is black, everybody's black. So you're kind of freed up a little bit. But I really loved it. Dakar is dope. It's a coastal city. The food is amazing. All that stuff.
Dakar is dope. Can we just say that one more time?
Dakar is. That's why I'm still here. Right?
Dakar.
It might be some mission involved, but I'm still here because I enjoy living here. And this is 23 years later. But came back when I was 18, and I was like, okay, this is dope. What? But a lot of people around me were saying, oh, we want to immigrate. We want to leave this place. And I think that's common. That's even to this day, people are getting into these small boats and trying to get out on the open seas, and they don't always make it. But I was like, this place is great. And at that time, it was kind of like 1998-ish. I was graduating from college. The internet had just started. Entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship was a saving grace.
The internet had just started. A moment of silence for us being old.
My bad.
No, keep going.
This is called Yahoo.com. Was the hot new thing.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And there was a guy named Wayne Huizinga who started Blockbuster Video, another kind of old. But he actually made his first billion as with Waste Management, which is which is basically a waste collection company in the United States. And I said, listen, if you can make $1 billion by collecting trash, guess what? We can collect some trash here in Senegal. And so that kind of clicked into my mind. I had been studying neuroscience. I did 3 labs at NIH. I was falling asleep. One of my labs was a sleep study. Literally studying.
But you weren't supposed to be a patient. You weren't supposed to be, yeah.
I wasn't supposed to be, but I was victim of the sleep study. So anyway, I kind of like the entrepreneurship thing clicked for me, and as a way of taking initiative in a place that I enjoyed and making it what we want it to be. And so my first job out of out of college was supposed to be here. I wanted to come straight here. I was like, listen, I don't got no money. I don't have no skills. I don't know about business. So I was a math major. And so I went to Wall Street. My mother was, she had just passed away, and she probably would have not let me go there. She's totally against that. But for me, it was a way to kind of get exposed to what business is about.
Yeah.
I took my little bonus and I came here as soon as I did my 3rd year in London. I came here and I invested that in Senegal, my first business.
Wow. And we'll talk about another point, maybe over cocktails, the Wall Street. We all spent some time on Wall Street.
Yeah.
And what we got out of that. But you've also touched on the disorderly beauty of Senegal and a sense of wabi-sabi in Senegalese art and culture.
Yeah.
I would love for you just to share how this is perspective of embracing imperfection and the unique aesthetic of Senegal and from your broader views on creativity and development in Africa, how they're aligned.
I think that's there's a cultural vibe in Senegal, which is different from kind of like what I was familiar with, which is like a little bit kind of in between the lines. Whereas in Senegal, there's a little bit more of freedom of autonomy of personal development, meaning people, you see there, they'll have some of my cousins, they have like 6 or 7 children, right? Or my aunts have 6 or 7 children. And one of them, their personality will emerge this way, and the other one, their personality will emerge. And it's kind of like, let's allow these people to become who they are. And, I think that kind of freeness is something that I've observed, and I appreciated very early. I remember jumping on a carapide. I don't know if you've taken a carapide. I don't take carapides anymore. Carapide is one of these old buses, colorful. It looks like...
Okay, very beautiful to look at. I don't know about right.
Beautiful to look at.
Yeah.
You're going to inhale some fumes.
Yeah.
Because there's no windows. But these are like from the 60s. They're like old Renault trucks from the 60s. But there's always a guy hanging on the back, and he's like looking for people. And it's like, I jumped on the bus, and then I didn't put I didn't put a thing in the machine. It's like a different kind of way of behaving. And so I think that Senegal is endowed. It's a coastal city. It's a beautiful coastline. It's got this kind of Sahelian, semi-desert with these baobab trees, sand everywhere. You feel like you're at the beach all the time. The food is great, but we don't have the feeling of being like locked into any one particular way. I think what that results in is that nothing is perfect. Things aren't going to be perfect. There's the beauty, but then it comes with the fact that maybe a crumbling brick here or there. And that's you could think of it as part of the beauty, but it's also kind of like the freeness of it, in my opinion. I think in Senegal, there's a lot of discipline, religious discipline and stuff like that. But in terms of how you behave, I think people allow you to be who you are.
Interesting. I think there's beauty in imperfection, but also beauty in that freedom of choice, right? I want to come back to Howard now. So we both went to Howard and graduated same year, actually. How did being at an HBCU, HU.
There you go.
How did being at an HBCU like Howard shape the way you see yourself and the African diaspora particularly, and the role you wanted to play in uplifting it?
Yeah. So confession, my first year was at Morehouse.
Oh, okay.
It was at Morehouse.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
My dad went to Morehouse as well.
Okay.
So yeah, but we're going to let that one go.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and the irony is I went to Howard to find more diversity, which is ironic because we're all Black, so to speak. You have the School of Fine Arts. People that go to school for fine arts, it's so different from someone that's going just to for math or whatever. A lot of my friends were from the School of Engineering, and they were probably all Jamaican. So there was a ton of diversity that I really appreciated. And you also have the excellence. Howard is just so much tradition of Black excellence. It's a mecca because it attracts people. So one day I was like, oh, that's Muhammad Ali over there. And we were all kind of going up to Muhammad Ali. I mean, that's what you get at Howard, that vibe. And I went back for the election, tried to support Kamala Harris, and it was so vibey. And I was like, that's why I'm so glad I went to Howard U. That's the soul.
Yeah.
And then the kids were treating me with a lot of politeness, and I was like, okay, maybe
it's the grays and the beard.
Maybe I'm an elder at this point. But
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I think it goes back to also the point you made earlier around having a family where so many people have done so many different things. You had so many different options of what Blackness could look like. I mean, the thing that I remember the most from my time at Howard, well, I remember a lot, but what I appreciated was I joke all the time. There was this one moment where I was going to a friend's, it was in a dorm over by the McDonald's, the towers. And
I was in the towers.
and one window was blasting the Fugees. One window was blasting the Cranberries.
Oh.
And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I never thought about the but what Howard made perfectly clear that anything is a black thing if a black person is doing it.
I'm doing that.
You don't have to I was on the swim team. I didn't even know that black people didn't swim, right? Like,
I think swimming was a required class, if I recall
100%.
correctly, in the core curriculum.
yeah, totally.
Because black people need to know how to swim.
Exactly. And so I think that normalization, that so many options, I think it just gives you a sense of freedom. And so it's really powerful because I can see how it shows up in all of our lives to some degree as well. I want to move to African innovation because that's where you spent so much of your time and energy. Wuri Ventures is clearly grounded in a belief in Africa's long-term potential, not just as a market, but as a wellspring of innovation. What was the driving force behind establishing Wuri Ventures, and what key opportunities are you most excited about within the African entrepreneurship landscape right now?
Yeah, like I said, this is kind of like a continuation of what I've wanted to do ever since I came in 1998.
Yeah.
But essentially, I think it's really about initiative. I think a lot of times in Africa, we have the sense that we have to wait for the government, or we have to wait for the World Bank, we have to wait for the IFC, one of these things, and that creates a sense of paralysis. And so when I first came, I started my business when I was 26. The goal was to create jobs. That was number one. We created a little light manufacturing company, and we had a brand. You don't want to know what the brand was called? Okay, I'll tell you. It was called Cristal. It wasn't champagne. It was vanilla flavored sugar that they put into the tea ceremony that they do.
Got it.
I got a kick out of it because
I get a kick out of it too. It was very of the moment.
it's of the moment, the Biggie Smalls and all that kind of stuff. But that brand is actually still going on today. And basically the idea was that, okay, ataya, it's a tea ceremony that people do every day. And it's usually prepared by young men. I said, this is something that belongs to us as, young Senegalese people. This is something that we should be able to innovate within and kind of create something around this. And so it's not like something that is outside of us that we're bringing in. We just use our own creativity to kind of develop a brand around this kind of business. So that lasted for over 10 years. The brand is still out there. We ended up with just about, I think, between 85 and 100 employees. So we did succeed in that objective. But really it was about, okay, whatever you have your mind on, let's just go ahead and do it. And especially as young people. And that morphed into Wuri Ventures, which is basically the notion of entrepreneurial capital. We talked about Wall Street. There's a lot of different types of finance out there, but the finance that is appropriate and that is able to work with entrepreneurial companies is different from the finance that you see on Wall Street or in a bank, and it requires an understanding of those businesses and what what it takes to finance them. In particular, it's a staged and syndicated investment approach. So syndicated means we're sharing the investment risk with a lot of different people. So it's rare that there's only one investor in this type of situation. And then it's staged. And it's staged based on hitting the milestones and proving the assumptions that underlie the business itself.
And can I jump in there? Because I think it implies or requires a different understanding of risk. And we often hear about risk when it comes to investing in Africa, but you position the continent as a place of talent, creativity, and return. And you've positioned, you've told a very different, you have a very different understanding of what risk means and how risk plays out. How do you flip the narrative, and what do investors still get wrong about the African market, particularly with the sense of risk involved?
The notion that we're going to eliminate all risk in Africa is not possible. You have to have a tolerance for risk. And I think that's the real challenge, is that a lot of the sources of capital do not tolerate any risk at all. Meaning that they want the political risk to be gone. They want the macroeconomic risk to be gone. They want the technology risk. You can't. And so this approach to kind of entrepreneurial capital, the venture capital approach, actually enables us to take risk on things that are unproven. We're dealing with uncertainty, right? The future, in Senegal, we have to add inshallah, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. But we need to be able to make investments on a young person. That in and of itself is a risky endeavor, but we spread it out in such a way that, okay, one of those is going to pop off and become a big success. The example is, I'll give a shout out to Wave, which is one of our portfolio companies. It's a mobile money company. And Wave is a unicorn. And that the success of one of those investments offsets the risk that we've taken on the other investments. Just on that point, actually, I was in the Bay Area a couple of years back, and there was an impact investor there. Impact investing is a new form of investing. And on the chart, they had, okay, that the loss rate on the portfolio was like 0.1%. I said, that just means you're not taking enough risk. So it's not that we want to eliminate risk. It's that we should embrace the risk and go for it, and know that some things will succeed and that will help to offset the things that don't.
I mean, it speaks to the fact that risk is part of the investment portfolio and a way of doing the work.
It's got to. And that's that's how I don't, you can use the word venture capital, but for me, it's entrepreneurial capital, which does embrace risk. And I think as young people, taking a risk, it's great. Take the risk when you're young, get married, and then settle down and do whatever you need to do.
I also love, and just this is a side note as well, that we can feel free to edit from the conversation, but I love how inshallah is used here with some degree of hopefulness, as opposed to, I kind of feel like as someone who speaks Arabic and the rest of the Arabic speaking world, inshallah means no. So if you ask your dad, hey, Pops, can we do such and such? And he says, inshallah, it means it's not happening.
Inshallah just means God willing.
Exactly.
Listen,
exactly. But I do want to come back to this idea. I mean, really, the investing piece. You've written about the need to invest in talented entrepreneurs at the start of their journey. What are some of the key attributes funders should be looking for when deciding on who to bet on?
One thing is, we have to realize Africa. We've kind of been downplaying Africa in the United States for way too long. Even the map is shrunk, right? The Decatur projection is like a shrunken version of the continent of Africa. Africa is a behemoth, 1.3 billion people. So that's 4 times the size of the United States. And guess what? People eat, they consume. And so most businesses are selling people either goods or services that people will be consuming. So when you have that many people, that creates an enormous market. Another way to frame it, we have 54 different countries. You can try in one country, it doesn't work, try another country, 54, you can't finish them. I think the viewpoint amongst even people living in different African countries is, okay, like you have Senegal and then we have Paris. When I was living in Nigeria, they're like, oh, we have Nigeria and we have London. They don't even talk about UK, they said London. And I know
the centering of European countries.
Yeah, let's forget about them. And let's just focus on the continent, the people that are our neighbors. Senegal is part of a monetary union similar to the euro. The euro is however many countries that have a common currency. That took them an enormous amount of work to get that done. Guess what? Senegal is part of one of those common currency zones. 8 countries that have the common currency, common legal framework, common exterior tariff. And that's I think that's something that is it kind of where the opportunity comes from. The opportunity comes from the scale. Just like China, just like India, the scale of Africa is on that level. So let's not underestimate.
So picking back up, you've written quite a bit about the need to invest in talent entrepreneurs at the start of their journeys. What are some of the key attributes funders should be looking for when deciding who to take on, who to take a bet on?
I think the first answer to the question is a macro answer. And it's really just about Africa. Just because in the United States, we've kind of like been diminishing the importance of Africa for a long time. Even the map has been shrunk. Even
Literally.
Google Maps is not an accurate representation of the size of and the scale of much of the world, including Africa. So first of all, we have 1.3 billion people. So that's similar to India, which is say 1.4 billion. China 1.6 billion. So we're in that kind of realm, and that's 3 times the United States, right? And what's interesting is that it's actually the fastest growing active population, which means the young working age population. The fastest growing is in the continent of Africa because of the number of young people. So that demographic pressure will kind of float all boats. We have 800 million kind of job seekers, and obviously once you get a job, then you can start spending that money. That floats all boats, and that you don't find anywhere else in the world. And that's why people are waking up to the importance of Africa as an investment destination. So that's the first thing. We need to realize the scale. There are 54 different countries. There are these regional blocks. Senegal is part of a West African regional bloc of, if you throw in Nigeria, it's about 350 million people. If we just include the common currency zone, there's an 8-country, it's actually a 14-country common currency, which is not obvious to pull off. And hats off to them for pulling it off. I actually did write a blog about the importance of this currency, which has a peg to the euro. We don't want to necessarily have each country have their own currency. It's actually a topic of discussion right now in Senegal, where they want to kind of create their own currency. I said, how does that work out in other countries around us, which have high levels of inflation, just because it's the currency has been politicized. In this region, the currency is managed by an independent central bank, and no one president can initiate the printing of money, which causes inflation.
Yeah.
It's funny, like what we see in the United States, the inflation in the past, whatever, it's because of the printing of money and the lack of independence of central bank. We've learned so many lessons of what happens in Africa that we can apply directly to what the presidents, who will remain unnamed in America, are doing, because we've seen it before.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the importance of Africa not to be underestimated. There's a lot of different flavors of investing in Africa. We have impact investing, which is important, keeping in mind the impact on populations. You have kind of cold hard investment in mining and stuff like that. You have venture capital, which is an emerging asset class. We reached $5 billion in invested dollars in 2022 and 2021. And so that's didn't exist when I was running my business, VC and kind of support for entrepreneurs. But there's a concept which I'm actually thinking about right now, which I haven't written about. And it will be called corporations and nation states. And this kind of intuition comes from a podcast that I listened to called Empire, which is about empires around the world. So they were talking about India and how it came to be colonized by the British. And what I learned is that the British did not colonize India. A company colonized India called the British East India Company, which was a corporation that did an IPO in London, where you have people like tailors and butchers investing in the IPO, aggregating all that money. And then what they do with that money, they went and they hired pirates, Pirates of the Caribbean. They hired them to go over to dominate and take over India. And that just speaks to this tool of being able to aggregate money together and then use it to create competitiveness. The same thing happened in the British Africa Corporation, which is what led kind of the conquest of parts of West Africa. You think about Ghana, you think about other places like that. And guess what their main business was?
Well, we know.
We already know. We're on Gorée Island. Their main business and their source of wealth was in slavery.
Got it.
But it really is it's about this notion of a corporation. The other thing that can aggregate capital is our nation states, which have the power of taxing people. That's how they're aggregating their capital. So I think we have to kind of recognize the power that is in this kind of, people call it capitalism or whatever, but it's really about pooling capital and then putting it to good use together. And so that's what I believe, the role of VCs, so to speak, is to aggregate capital and then to point it in the direction of a very useful, productive use kind of activity.
And let's jump in there because I think that you've also spoken and written quite a bit about how frameworks imported from elsewhere don't always serve us, right? And so while we can all agree this idea of pooling resources is important, but to do what becomes the question. That's where things go wrong, right? And so I would love for you just to share a little bit more about what does it look like to build systems of support that are rooted in African realities, African values, African possibilities, and not foreign expectations.
Yeah. Well, I think this is kind of key to our thesis as an investor for Wuri Ventures is that, first of all, we noticed a kind of an imbalance in who is benefiting from the investment. There was a study by Village Capital that said that 90% of the capital went to non-African founders in East Africa in particular. And people recognize that. And, basically what we understood is that the sources of capital are not in Africa. A lot of times the investors are either in the United States, or they're in Europe, or they're in China, or they're in India, or they're in Japan. And therefore, the founders who are in Africa don't have access to those sources of capital, which is why we wanted to create a fund that's locally based. And having access to those types of investors now enables these kind of talented young founders, or even old founders. It really, I don't want to be ageist at this point because sometimes people that have some gray hairs, they learn a thing or two, and maybe earn one or two of those gray hairs. But yeah, so I think the proliferation of locally based venture capital firms is what enables talented African founders to launch their thing with capital behind them. A lot of people just bootstrap it. Bootstrapping is honorable. I wrote a paper saying that these bootstrappers are excellent entrepreneurs, but they just have to make do with what they have.
Yeah.
But when you put capital behind it, it just takes off.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge is not only on the entrepreneurs, it's also the investors. A lot of times you have investors that don't have a clear understanding of the market. For me, a proxy for having an understanding of the market is, do you speak one of these hundreds of African languages? Have you invested enough time to learn one of the African languages? Maybe that's an unfair demand, but for me, it shows that you have invested in the region personally, such that you know what you're doing. A lot of times, the investing goes to the wrong people because the investors don't understand how to discern what's good and what's bad. And the last point is, and I wrote an article about this, which is the notion of frog leaping. So we have this notion, it's a new concept. I'll try to slow it down a little bit. The notion of leapfrogging is something that has resonated with people. So people in Senegal are making payments using their phone, right? So they never had a credit card. They just kind of leaped over it, right? People never had a personal computer, but they're using this supercomputer, artificial intelligence on there. That's a leapfrog. But I realized that in some cases, the innovation can happen in this developing world, and it can come back in the other direction. There's a company in the US, ride-hailing company called Lyft, which was initially called Zimride, because he went over to Zimbabwe and he saw how people were pooling people together in taxis, and he wanted to apply that in the United States. And so I coined that term frog leaping, because I do think that innovation can come from creativity, which comes from anywhere, and in particular, it's in observance of people that understand the realities and they figure out how to make it a little bit better.
And I want to there are 2 points there that I would love just for you to have you speak to. One, we have a funder, Liz Thompson, in the States, who's actually been on the podcast. She talks all the time about how, as a funder, she works with Black and Brown organizations and leaders, how her work is different because she actually has love for the communities that she's funding. And how very often people don't recognize that a lot of people are working with, funding communities they actually don't love. They respect them as potential consumers, but there's no real appreciation of the community, and how that really changes how she does that work. And it's a different work, but also it's a different outcome. I mean, the other piece is thinking about, and I've heard you articulate this to some degree, you hear it all the time in impact investing conversations in the States, particularly amongst Black folks, Martha's Vineyard and the crowds. There's a difference between investing in communities and leaders when you see them as potential consumers as opposed to potential creators. and how that's a different perspective and appreciation. Do either of those thoughts resonate for you as you think about your
Well, the
work?
first thing about the love, I've heard it phrased in a lot of different ways. One of my friends kind of said that values-based investing. I kind of like that. I like to think of it as soul power. If you do something with soul and with a sense of mission and with intentionality, that comes across, and people support that. So I appreciate that. Investing through love. In terms of the interplay with the market participants, so deriving ideas, that's what you have to do when you're an entrepreneur. So, I talk about investing, but we have also launched a new company under the umbrella of Wuri Ventures, which is it's an electric mobility company. So it's called Solar Box. We have adapted shipping containers, kind of like a DeLorean. The sides go up, and the whole top is solar panels.
Oh, wow.
And that design was created with local universities here. So we have, things. There's so many people that fresh graduates from college in Africa with engineering degrees, with business degrees, and we need to leverage that as startups here. So we worked with this university, and they developed this kind of thing that we have never seen elsewhere in the world, in my opinion. And that solar power kind of station will now charge electric motorcycles, which are also built here. And so that's something that actually occupies a lot of my time these days. We've raised outside money from it. We've raised over $1 million, and we're going to continue to raise. And that most of that is really indigenous creativity and know-how. So the engineers are helping us to come up with that. And just the last piece on Solar Box is that you can launch something, and guess what? People don't want it. It doesn't fit their need. So you have to have the humility to ask them what they want.
So we're going to spend the final part of our conversation looking ahead as we sit here on Gorée Island with the horns blowing, the birds chirping, and all the action out on the streets. You've written a lot about the slogan, Le Senegal qui gagne, or the Senegal that wins. What does this idea of a winning Senegal, or even a winning Africa more broadly, look like?
I think it's been happening. I think the vibe has. I remember, several years ago there was, there's the Senegalese Biennale, which is an art festival, and this is the first time we've seen so many non-francophone, let's say, people. I think there's been a little bit of a fear of coming to Senegal because I don't speak French, but in reality, it's kind of like open to everyone.
They don't either. The language on the streets will also.
There's so much to be discovered in the kind of Africa. I've had the good fortune of traveling around, like yourself. Ethiopia, I love it. Rwanda, fantastic. South Africa, shout out. Haven't been to Zambia yet, but Africa is amazing. 54 different flavors that you can hit. But in terms of the Senegal qui gagne, that actually was personal for me because I arrived in Senegal in 2002, so end of 2001. And that was when we beat France in the World Cup. Senegal beat France.
That was a moment.
That was a huge moment.
Yeah.
Even, those guys, I listened to a radio show and they correctly observed that the players could not walk the streets without getting mobbed. It was like super vibey. And then we had 20 years of no soccer success. And then it happened again, I think it was 2022. So 20 years marked my presence in Senegal of 20 years. And so in this case, we did win the African Cup of Nations. We got that feeling again. And it's an homage also to one of our presidents. Senegal's on our 5th president, which is one of the strongest democracies in the continent of Africa. And
the world at this point, because...
And so one of the presidents had this slogan, the Senegal qui gagne. And when we have this attitude in Senegal, it's like Christmas. People are more cooperative, friendly with one another, and that's a vibe that I like. And it's just about self-belief. It's about let's make positive change and take initiative to do it ourselves. We have to wait. So yeah.
No. and the mics won't pick it up, but there are children screaming outside, which is part of the things that excites me about Africa, to some degree, such a young continent.
Yeah.
Looking ahead, what excites you most about the future of innovation, entrepreneurship in Africa? And what kind of world do you hope to see built through the work that you're leading?
We're building a house we call the Sally Tech House. It's outside of Dakar. So Dakar is lovely. Senegal is beautiful. Senegal is amazing. So it's about an hour outside of Dakar. It's on the lagoon of Saman, which is in a town called Gorée. So we've bought a piece of land and we're building a house which is meant to be an entrepreneurial residence. So people can come and kind of imagine what they want to do next. And I do believe in this kind of idea that the ideas should come from where you are. We're not importing ideas. We're not copying and pasting. And I think that we've all caught the bug across the different countries in Africa. Nigeria has definitely caught the entrepreneurial bug. South Africa has had the bug. Even, countries like Senegal are now starting to have people graduate and dream to be entrepreneurs. And so we want to create those spaces for them. And continue to set the good example. I mean, in some cases, we're innovating ourselves, like Solarbox. In some cases, we're supporting other entrepreneurs. But the more people see the good examples, the more that they'll feel empowered to do it. And it doesn't always have to be on the scale of a unicorn or something like that. A lot of times, it's especially in the creative economies, they're so strong. There's such a reservoir of cultural assets in Africa that these creative economy entrepreneurs are drawing from. We just talked about Dye Labs, which is a friend of mine who founded it. Just there's so much, and that's at a level that surpasses the rest of the world. And that's what we've seen. A friend of mine, Kojo Anand, says that this is Africa's soft power. And we've started to export it through the music, through the design, through the fashion. And so I think as long as it's a place where people enjoy living, that's the first thing, right? You have to be able to thrive where you are. The world is more connected now. We got people, a new friend of mine in Senegal, they picked up and left Richmond, Virginia, because they wanted their kids to go to high school in Senegal. They're 100% American, Black Americans. They opened a little coffee shop and they're doing well, but they can still do their business because we live in the internet, in the connected world.
Yeah.
So more, this is a welcome to the global diaspora. Come set up shop here, go surfing at the beach every day, and then log in to your computer and do whatever you need to do.
Well, I will take that welcome, and it's worth noting that Africa, the continent more broadly, particularly Senegal, has always played a role as a tastemaker. Yeah. And so it's great to see you take advantage of that role as a tastemaker and actually live into that role and actually be an economy maker as well.
And I would like to say, New Orleans obviously has been a global tastemaker.
My home, yes, please.
It's a home of jazz and the blues. And guess where the blues come from? Comes from Africa.
Right.
You can hear it. And you go to Mali, you can hear the direct link. These kind of artisanal guitars that they're playing, and they're singing over top of it. 100% blues. Another thing I learned recently, and I'm not sure if you have given much thought of this, but there is a linkage between the island that we're currently sitting on and St. Louis, which is in the north of Senegal, and Louisiana, because it all has this French kind of a mix of French and African experiences. And there was direct linkages between New Orleans and St. Louis in particular that's been documented.
Oh, wow.
So I don't think you're that far away from home.
No. Well, that would explain why I've always felt some degree of home whenever I'm in Senegal. So
there you go. There you go.
Well, thank you again for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks for a wonderful conversation. And thanks for all the work that you're doing both here in Dakar and more broadly.
Appreciate it.
And so we're going to end the conversation as we started, grounded in peace, and look forward to hearing more about all your work.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.